You ready, Nick? Let's get him. If you tuned into me, you watching Gully TV. I'm continuing on my long list of media personalities lately, and tonight I have a special guest. I appreciate it if you introduce yourself. Thank you.
My name is Angela Yee, and I am the host of Way Up with Angela Yee on iHeart.
I appreciate your time. One of the first things I want to ask you, I see that you're a Brooklyn native. Could you tell me what it was like growing up in Brooklyn?
Brooklyn's an amazing place. I'm so happy that I still live here. I grew up in Flatbush, went to PS 235, also in Flatbush, and then I ended up going to private school in 7th grade. I went to Poly Prep. It was two different worlds going from Flatbush to Bay Ridge in Brooklyn, Dyker Heights to be exact. But it definitely was amazing. It was like growing up, you have no idea there's a world outside of there. And so for me, everything happened like in my circumference of my blocks. And we also didn't live that close to the train station. So everything was kind of far away. Like parking was really hard in Flatbush. You had to walk like 12 blocks if you could even get a parking spot, alternate side parking. Um, and I think you just learn to be really independent at a young age.
Okay. What drew you to the hip hop culture?
Hip hop culture was all around me growing up. And so I just remember listening to like Salt and Pepper. Those were like some of my earliest memories. Run DMC, waiting for the video shows to come on. I think it was called like Friday Night. I can't remember the name of it. It was like Friday Night Tracks or something like that. Video Music Box, obviously, with Ralph McDaniels. Even on the radio, though, we didn't have like a hip hop station. It would be at a certain time hip hop would come on, or you had to listen to one of the college radio stations. That was kind of the only way you would hear it on the radio. That's when we used to have to record songs on cassette to be able to hear them
Right.
after it was debuted.
I could tell that you got a vast knowledge of hip hop. You got an incredible library behind you. Give me a little insight on your college education at Wesleyan University.
So I went to Wesleyan and majored in English. I think I will say this: going to Wesleyan was like an extension of New York because there were a lot of people from New York that went there, and it's only like a 2-hour drive. And so even going there, a lot of my friends were like from Harlem, from Brooklyn. There was a lot of people I already knew that went to school there. My best friend there is from Philly. And so we actually used to book hip hop acts to come on campus. And so early on, my best friend Santi and we were in this Women of Color collective. And the school will give you a budget to literally book artists. So we used to do that. And we also booked like The Last Poets, Sonia Sanchez. I believe we booked The Roots, Groove Theory, Channel Live. It was just a lot of things like that. And so even being on Wesleyan's campus, we also used to go to other schools to go see other artists perform. I remember De La Soul did our Spring Fling. We had Parliament, Funkadelic. They came and they performed like all day. So it was amazing.
Tell me what it was like meeting the legendary Last Poets. That sounded very interesting.
Oh man, so it was The Last Poets and Sonia Sanchez like on the same night. Really didn't get a chance to speak to them like that. It was just work. And so they
Yeah.
came, they did their thing. It was an amazing experience to be able to have that on campus. Like I didn't know that much about The Last Poets prior to that, but it definitely was inspirational and incredible to have been able to witness that.
Dope. I noticed after college, one of your earliest positions in hip hop was working at Wu Tang Records, correct?
Oh yeah, I worked for Wu Tang Corporation. So it was Wu Tang Management, Wu Tang Records. It was Epic because they had Razor Sharp Records. They had like a bunch of different groups, but they also had deals on all the different labels. So it was Def Jam, it was Geffen, it was MCA, it was Elektra. So everybody was kind of like in different situations. They had a deal for Wu Tang Records at Priority. They had Wu Tang Publishing. They had everything. They had Wu Wear. So it really was like on the back of my card, I just remember there was like a bunch of different companies. They had the 36 Chamber Studio. So it really gave me an opportunity to do a lot of different things, but also meet a lot of people.
What years was you there?
I interned when I was in college. And then when I graduated was the year that their second album came out. So that's really when I started working with them, and they were on tour with Rage Against the Machine.
So the second album is
Was it the W?
Yeah, the W. That's with Triumph and all of that.
Yep.
Big legendary time. What it was like there, you kind of abbreviated, man. Give me some highlights, please.
Well, when I interned, I worked at Wu Tang Management. That was in Staten Island on Bay Street. And so I honestly had never really been to Staten Island before that. I did go to Poly Prep, and Poly Prep is in Bay Ridge. And Bay Ridge, you could see like the bridge to go to Staten Island, the Verrazano Bridge is right there. But it was amazing because it was like I had friends that were working at other labels, but nobody had an experience like I did. I had the opportunity to really get to know the artists. I had an opportunity to work in the studio. When they had shows, I would go with them to like different things, to even go on the road, to meet CEOs. I remember meeting Steve Rifkin, meeting Ron Sweeney, just meeting so many different people at different labels. And they gave me a lot of responsibilities at a really young age.
Right.
And I remember my friends being really jealous of the fact that I was able to be in these rooms and know these people, because a lot of times when you're working somewhere and you're kind of new, people don't want to allow you in that way. But my boss was divine. I was his assistant, and he definitely was like, the more that I could prove to him that I was responsible, the more responsibilities he gave me. And so it was a really respectful relationship. It was just nice to be able to really interact with the guys. It wasn't like it was like a family. So when I worked in the city at the office there, it was on University Place, 99 University Place. I mean, they would be in there like smoking weed, having drinks. Every time something happened, the guys came through there like it was their second home.
Right.
And so for me, it was just a great experience. I think the best part of it was also being able to meet people at all the different labels and companies. I remember they did this big deal with Mountain Dew sponsoring their tour, and just seeing how all of that worked, seeing how the finances worked, being able to do like little things like Method Man has to go to the bank. Oh, let me walk with him to the bank. He's buying a house. Well, let's help make sure this happens. Just really being involved in every aspect, because that actually helped me when it was time for me to be a responsible adult.
You came in from an administrative position at Wu Tang Records. When you was working with them behind the desk, behind the scenes, did you see yourself becoming an actual media personality?
I never thought about being a media personality. I always thought I would be a writer or a journalist. And when I was there, I actually did write bios for artists. I've done like articles. I remember doing a cover story for Vibe magazine on MMG. And so that was like one of my first covers with Rick Ross and Maybach Music Group. I also did a story on Machine Gun Kelly for YRB magazine. I did like a big feature interview on him. I've done like things like that. I just never thought about being the person on the radio. And then when I did start doing that, radio was not visual. So to me, it still was kind of a bit of a journalistic position. But then things started becoming so visual. So it took me getting out of my comfort zone from not being seen and people not having any idea what I look like. Because if you hear the name Angela Yee, this is not what you picture. I remember people thought I was like a straight up Asian person. And so they would be shocked when they saw me in real life, because they're like, Angela Yee, who's that? And so, it's been something that has evolved. But I will say the pace at which I've evolved has been a really slow and steady grind, which really helped me have a foundation to know and be comfortable with the spaces that I was moving into.
Okay. Your bio says from 2010 to 2022, you was at the Breakfast Club. Mm-hmm. How did you land that position?
So I worked at Sirius for 6 years prior to that. And first I worked with Cypher Sounds. And then after he left to go to Hot 97, I stayed and got my own morning show, The Morning After, with Angela Yee. And I also had lip service. And so at that time, there were a lot of people hitting me up to go to different outlets. Like they wanted me to come to Philly. They wanted me to come to Atlanta to do radio. Things really were going well for me when I was at Sirius, just because a lot of my interviews were getting picked up. I was getting a lot of press. It didn't help. I mean, it did help that Howard Stern was down the hall. And so sometimes guests would leave there and come to me. And I worked really hard. Like I grinded it out. And so it was interesting to me because people would hit me up like on Facebook, or somebody would reach out to me and say, hey, this person's interested. I literally had, a few other job offers just based off of people seeing my interviews. I also had a great relationship with Q, who owned WorldStar,
Right.
and he would post a lot of my videos on WorldStar. And that was at a time when people weren't really doing that. And I wasn't supposed to be doing that either. I bought a camera, and I just had like somebody that worked with us just like videotaping stuff, and I would upload it. It would literally take like a month for him to finally do all of that. But that helped me a lot for people to see that. And that's kind of what got me a lot of attention, is the fact that I was doing that really early on. And then, New York reached out to me, G Spin reached out to me from Power 105, and he wanted me to come there. Initially, he wanted me to come and just do weekends and fill in. And then Sirius told me no. And then I told him, I said, look, if there's an opportunity for me to do something full time, I would leave my job. And so when there was an opportunity, he called, and I did leave my job.
Right. How much of your degree did you have to apply to being a media personality?
I believe that writing is a pretty essential skill for what I do. And not just writing, but also comprehension. Like, as you can see, I read a lot of books. And so even me being able to like quickly read a story and take the facts from it that I need to, I'm able to do that. I also feel like even pitching myself, when it comes to me being able to send an email, when it comes to me being able to put together like a whole business plan, I'm able to do all of those things based on things that I've learned. But I will say college was important also because of the connections that you make. So even initially when I graduated, a lot of my friends went on to do things that we actually were able to come together and support each other and help each other out when it came to getting a check, when it came to networking, being able to get a job. So I would say college was good, not just for being able to learn more, because I don't think it's necessary. I believe that even before that, even in high school, writing was something that always came really naturally to me. And reading was something since I was in kindergarten. I read books like nonstop. And so while I don't think it's necessary, I do think the experience and the bridge between living at home with my parents to being on my own, becoming more responsible. I got my first job when I was a freshman in college, where I was actually getting paid because I did things. I worked at the New York City Transit Museum. I was a receptionist at a clinic in Vauxhall, New Jersey. Like I did a lot of little things before that wasn't necessarily paid. But when I got into college, I worked in the supermarket on campus. And that was like my first real like hourly paid job of being responsible, paying my own bills. So I feel like it's a good bridge into adulthood.
Okay. For 12 years, you was at the Breakfast Club with Charlamagne the God and DJ Envy. What it was like working with those guys?
Ooh, it was I mean, working on the Breakfast Club, I'll say working with anybody and getting up at 4 a.m. every day is gonna be good days and bad days.
Yeah.
But you just never know what it's gonna be, because that hours, like one of the things I'm most grateful for is being able to sleep a little bit more, because no matter what, it's tough. Um, I think that we created history. I mean, we got into the Radio Hall of Fame. We had some amazing things that we were able to create. All three of us came in together and started something new that was fresh, that nobody had ever done before, and literally made history doing it. It's something that I feel like I don't even understand the magnitude of until I meet people and they have to tell me what a big deal it is. Because to me, it was like, all right, get up, go do your job, do your best that you can every day. The listener is the number one reason why you're doing this. That's who we're here to super serve.
So y'all actually launched the Breakfast Club?
Yes, we sat down and even like brainstormed and came up with the name, and everything. So it was the three of us together that did that.
Right. Okay. I know while you there, you interviewed all types of entertainers, musicians, pro athletes. You got any standout interviews that come to mind? Maybe one of your favorites?
Um, yeah, I mean, SZA, and I love seeing where SZA has gone to this day. I think she's amazing. And I just remember, talking to her, Kendrick Lamar, obviously. So 50 Cent, he's always a great storyteller. JayZ. Everybody loves a JayZ interview. My biggest standout interview with JayZ though was probably when I was on Sirius, and I loved like certain other interviews I did on Sirius, like JB Smooth was a great interview for me. Dave Chappelle, he was a great interview. Donnell Rawlings, one of my really good friends, but always a good time when he used to come on the show. Right. But just so many, like if I go back and listen, it's like, damn, we did this. Soulja Boy was a standout interview. We had a lot.
What's the procedure required to book a whole interview? I know his situation got to be different than everybody else. I'm pretty sure he's concerned with who's going to be asking him the questions and all of that. What type of red tape is required?
You know, they didn't give us anything that we could or couldn't ask. When I was at Sirius, the interview that I did with him was when he just became president of Def Jam.
Okay.
And so it was him, Memphis Bleek, and Young Chris. And when we did that interview, Cypher Sounds was the lead on the show, but because I knew JayZ even before I ever did radio. And so I remember Cypher just being like, okay, Angela, it's Angela and JayZ. Go ahead, like take it. Because we were having like a real funny, lighthearted conversation. And then when he came on, you know, and even when I was at Sirius, Elliot Wilson would guest host with me sometimes when I had my own show. And there were a couple of times that he called up JayZ. He was like, yo, you know, I want to get you on the phone, and got him on the phone to talk about different things. And so there was no red tape when it came to that. I think that JayZ, when it comes to him, he's powerful enough that people are going to be more delicate than they normally would be as far as what questions they're going to ask. And then even if I think he's also clever enough that if somebody says or does something he doesn't like, you know, as a person getting interviewed, you know how to get around stuff.
Right.
So they've never have said like, he can't talk about this, don't ask him that.
Did y'all use writers at the Breakfast Club, or did the line of questioning come directly from the personalities?
Usually we had interns, so they might give us like some things to talk about and bullet points, but I've always done my own research because I don't think you could ever rely on anyone else's research. And so I'm a fan of doing my own research also and having that as like supplemental things. And so I've learned early on that you can't just rely on somebody handing you a sheet of paper. And so while we might get like, you know, some bullet points that are, this album's coming out this date, you know, this just happened, just won a Grammy, just things like that, you get that. But in addition to that, you should always do your own research.
Would you describe your time at the Breakfast Club as a good experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason why I have my own show now. You know, it's the reason why I have this house.
Yeah.
And I think that any situation that you're in, you have to make the most out of it no matter what, because one thing you have to learn is that no matter what you're going through behind the scenes, other people don't see that, and most people don't care.
Right.
And so if you can benefit from it as best as you can, do that. And then also, you know, if something's not serving you, then plan your exit.
Was it a personal decision to leave? I would cut the Breakfast Club on in my studio and just kind of like listen to it. I'd be walking around, you know, doing chores or whatever. And your voice was a part of the show. I could, you know, it resonated, your voice, and looked around and you was gone. Why did you leave the Breakfast Club?
I left the Breakfast Club to get my own opportunity to do my own show. Something that I've always known I wanted to do again, because I came from having my own show to being part of a trio and knowing that eventually I would have my own show again. I just didn't know when. And so I don't think anybody, if the opportunity comes, unless you're like that scared or don't believe in yourself enough, I don't think anybody should turn down an opportunity to be the marquee person and have your own show. You know, it's a different time slot for me. It's a time slot that we're building into something that's different than it's ever been in the past. And I feel good about it. I'm excited to be able, I think, to make my own decisions as far as what I want to do, to come up with my own segments, to say who I want to interview. If, you know, I have to work from somewhere else, I can do that. So I feel like, to me, it's nothing like being able to say, this is what I want to do, and doing it.
Okay. You spoke briefly about Drake and Kendrick Lamar. How you feel about the little battle they had over the summer?
I think that battle was, you know, It's something that's still ongoing that we're trying to see what's going to happen with, lawsuits and all of that. I think that for Kendrick, it was a major win because nobody anticipated him doing that. And I just remember I was in St. Thomas while all of this was happening at Carnival. And so everybody was literally waiting to see, like, is he going to drop something else? Oh my God, he put this out. And literally it was like, it was exciting for people to witness and see what was going to happen next. Drake was definitely on the top of his game at the time. And I just remember people being like, why hasn't Kendrick responded? Is he going to respond? Because Kendrick is so secretive and private about everything. It's not like he just pops out. And so for him, it showed what he's capable of because I don't think that people really could completely understand that.
Right.
As far as Drake as an artist, clearly he's still putting up the numbers. He's still a person that commands a lot of money. And so while I feel like it's definitely hurt, it's not like the end of Drake or anything like that. But it does bring into question like a lot of things, as far as what happens. And I think this happens all the time when people have like these hip hop battles. We saw it with JayZ and Nas, like what's off limits, what's not, what kind of things can you say about a person? Can you say things that aren't true? What's too far? So everybody has a different barometer on what that is. And that was definitely proof of that.
What's your understanding of the lawsuit in your own words?
I think that the lawsuit is basically saying that, uh, from what I'm understanding, it seems like Drake had some type of renegotiation happening, and he feels like they wanted to lower his value by pumping up something and increasing the numbers on something that was directly coming at him and things that weren't true. And I'm sure for any person, nobody wants to be called a pedophile. That's, but I also think in a hip hop battle, people say things that aren't true all the time. You said that Kendrick's kid wasn't his and was his boy and business partner's Dave Free's kid. And so to me, it's kind of like you can't let what somebody says in a hip hop battle get to you that much that it comes up in a lawsuit. You know what I mean? And then I also feel like it's always questionable. Streaming is just so different, because sometimes things come on when I'm streaming music. It's not like I picked the song, but there's playlists and people want to get on those certain playlists. And so, do I think that any label would have some type of, grudge against the artist that's on their label because of negotiations? I don't, I can't answer that. But do I feel like people get on playlists all the time and it helps them with their numbers? Yeah, but also people really did enjoy Not Like Us. I mean, we've seen, the results of that. And I just also think about how people feel programmed to like certain songs because they hear it so much.
Yeah.
And so it's just streaming is different than getting played on the radio. So it's just something that, as things are happening, it's like, I don't know what's supposed to be right and what's wrong. I don't know what's allowed, what's not allowed. I don't know if legally you can't do that because sometimes I like hearing playlists of songs that I may not have chosen that come up, and that's how I get to learn a song. So it's just, something that I feel like people look at it like he was being a sore loser. And I'm not sure if this lawsuit is going to go anywhere or not.
How you feel about it? Before you answer that, based on the history of battle rap, people have said a lot more perverted shit in battle rap. Tupac mentioned kids.
Yeah.
He mentioned Faith Evans.
Mm-hmm.
JayZ and Nas, they threw Carmen Bryant's name around like it's battle rap. Did it change the way you viewed Drake as a man, as an MC?
I feel like if you're going to get involved in it, you got to just be ready for whatever comes your way. And the best thing that you can do is, even if you're offended, act like you're not.
Right.
It's kind of like when we used to diss each other on the school bus and your mama jokes. You can't get in the game and then be mad because somebody said something that you're offended by. That's the whole point of it. So you kind of have to be ready for all those things to happen and come back stronger. And that's all you can do. And when it comes to, I feel like battle rap, there really is not supposed to be any limits. I remember JayZ apologizing for what he said about
Carmen.
because about Carmen and how his mom was disappointed in that. And so I just also believe that when you're engaging in these things, while you are going to end up saying things, don't say anything that later on you're like, because that's weird too, to say something and then regret it and take it back. It's a battle rap. And so when you guys are beefing with each other and going hard at each other and saying things, I think the best thing to do is be clever. And I think the things that hurt the most are the things that are true. And if something's not true, I don't feel like it should hurt you that much.
Right. Last summer, I believe you received a phone call from JayZ and Suge Knight. Could you tell me exactly what happened and where it went wrong at? It was made public that Dave decided not to release whatever happened. The floor is yours.
So we did an interview. JayZ was like, "Hey, I have this podcast launching with Suge Knight, and so we wanted to have him on the show." And so Maino guest hosts my show all the time, and things went a little left. I'm trying to remember the full conversation, but Dave was on Zoom, Suge was on the phone, and I think it was something about being in protective custody. And I'm gonna be honest, like, Maino was locked up for 10 years, so he know about everything, like what goes on in jail. I'm not that well versed in it.
Right.
And so it was something about like being in protective custody, and then Suge was saying he wasn't, but then he said something about Maino, and Maino was not in protective custody. And then it turned into a conversation about Biggie. We're from Brooklyn, and Maino has some things to say about that. And then Suge got mad and hung up. And then JayZ was like, the next day, after everything was edited, he was asking us not to air it. And so it was just a call that, my producer then had to go to the higher ups. And, it's way up with Angela Yee. It's not supposed to be a show that is controversial like that. And some things kind of aren't worth, to me, it wasn't my call. It wasn't my decision. But they made it seem like Suge only wanted to be like positive. And I've seen him saying a lot of crazy things. So I don't know that that's the reason of what it is. Maybe he just didn't like the way it made him appear. And so that we never ended up playing that.
Okay. Tell me about your podcast, Lip Service.
Well, Lip Service, we've been doing Lip Service for 10 years as a podcast. Before that, it was on Sirius.
Right.
And so I remember bringing it back because, I was on the Breakfast Club. I wanted something, like I said, I've always wanted to go back to doing my own show. Sometimes being around guys all the time, you want to have that woman energy and have those types of conversations. And when I initially started Lip Service, when I was at Sirius, it was really to educate guys on what women talk about when they're not around.
Right.
And to help them understand us better, but also a space for us to be able to talk about whatever we wanted and know that we're not alone in anything. Because I think a lot of times as women, Black women, Latina women, women of color, we get judged differently than white women and definitely differently than men.
Right.
And so I wanted us to be able to have a space where we could have conversations openly, honestly, dialogue where we don't feel like we're under attack, where we can be honest. And I know that with my girls, we have all kinds of conversations. So I wanted to be able to bring that to the radio. It's funny because when I first started it, it was a segment on my show with Cypher, and the women were all anonymous and had code names because it was like women who were secretaries, one woman was a lawyer. And then it turned into more than that because the segment got so popular, they offered me my own show, like a weekly show. So I started doing this weekly show, Lip Service. And then when I left Sirius to come to iHeart, I had the option to continue it, but Sirius, I think they were kind of mad that I left. So it just didn't happen because I had carved it out of my agreement just in case. And so when podcasting became a thing, initially I did an interview with August Alsina and I did one with Mila J. And it was kind of just 2 one-offs and they did pretty good. So we were like, let's bring it back. And my boy Scotty owns the studio I work out of, Engine Room Audio. And he was like, let's bring the podcast back. You could do it here. We'll offer whatever support that we can. And to this day, they still do.
From what I'm seeing on the internet, you had a recent episode and you had Bag Fuel and you had Math Hoffa in the same spot at the same time. I have to commend you. You remained cool as the other side of the pillow the whole time. But tell me exactly what it was that people felt they saw, because people made videos about that encounter. So if you please.
Well, me knowing Hyneken, Esso, and knowing Math Hoffa, first of all, I know that they've run into each other on other occasions and spoken and even have plans to sit down. So I know it's not like a violent, we're going to beat each other up situation. Like they can talk, it's a business disagreement. And so it was not planned. So I want to say that. Kim Osario was doing the second episode. She was guest hosting, and you could see her on the episode that came on after that. I'm wearing the same clothes. So I purposely didn't put her on the Bag Fuel episode because our other guest host Jordan was out, and so Kim sometimes will come in too and guest host. And so I guess Math told her, "Oh, I want to bring Angela a gift." So we were literally about to start the podcast, and she sends a text like, "Math wants to bring you a birthday present." And so me sitting there, I'm like, okay, they may not even see each other because they're coming on the next episode, and I also know they're not gonna fight, And so towards the end of the episode, Math is in the control room and we could see him. I didn't see him at first. It was actually Hyneken and Esso. They was like, oh, there's Math. And so they were like, yeah, bring him in. So he comes in the studio. He gives me the bottle of 1942. And then they're like, everybody's like, yeah, let's sit down. Let's talk. And I knew, like, to me, I know they weren't going to be disrespectful and like do nothing crazy because they've seen each other. So it's not like it's on site the business side of it was messed up. And I know that eventually they were going to have a conversation, and it probably was a question of whose platform would it be on. I think that they had a lot of success together, but sometimes people can't agree on things when it comes to business moves. And they've both been doing their thing. So it's not like, I think it's worse when one entity moves on and the other one isn't doing nothing.
Right.
This is a different situation. Everybody's doing their thing. So we can either move forward, do some things together, or we can move forward separately. But I think the best case scenario is to not have, that bad blood where we're continually talking about each other. People think they can't be in the same room. That's not true. And so it turned into like a bit of a yelling match. But that's a New York thing too. I think people have to understand, talking aggressively and doing all of that, that don't mean nobody's about to fight and throw down. These are men that have had these, they saw each other, say less. The plan was, to get together, go to dinner, talk. It didn't happen. And it wasn't like how people were making it seem like it was some dangerous situation. It wasn't a setup at all. It was just, Kim, I guess Math knew she was coming there and that they were there. And that was it. If I wanted to like set somebody up, I would have told Kim, come on the Bag Fuel episode. But I also let her know, I said, look, Bag Fuel's doing it first. I didn't put you on that episode because I know she does Math Hoffa's show. So I respectfully didn't do that. And Kim and I go way back. Like I've known her, we both came up in this game together. So it's not like I don't talk to her all the time anyway about things. So it definitely wasn't a setup. And I think that it was a good conversation to have because for a lot of people, it was a lot of like them speaking on it, him speaking on it. They got to talk to each other. And there was a lot of people that followed up with me afterward that were mentioned in those conversations.
Right.
That were like, that's not what happened. I know, Byron Kirkland hit me like, hey, y'all got me trending
right,
because of that conversation. And I think and it felt like, and I said this during the episode, it feels like it was just a misunderstanding. Like it was a contract. One person said that they didn't know about it, but it came from a legitimate person. And so sometimes it's just like people don't communicate the way that they should. That's all.
right. How well did the episode do?
You know what? I got to look. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but I think, people are tuned in for it. And I do think that people would like to see them together again. Now, whether or not that can happen, I can't say, but I could see them maybe sitting down and kind of hashing through things.
Right. One of the last things I want to ask you is there's a very, very public feud between Cameron and Jim Jones. How you feel about that?
You know, I'm gonna be honest. I'm seeing all kinds of things I never heard of before. I see people coming out the woodworks with their different stories about what happened. The worst is when people who know each other really well and really cared about each other fall out the way that they do publicly. I feel like they've fallen out on occasions before and managed to mend things, but then they fall out again. So I don't like to see it because my whole thing is if I feel like we're good and we're family, at one point we were, even if we fall out later in life and I can't stand you and I don't want to speak to you again, I'm still not going to talk crazy about you behind your back. But that's just not behind your back, but like in a public forum. Um, so I think there's that. I also feel like, you know, I do think it's disappointing because they made so much history together and we hated before when they didn't get along. So now here it goes again. And I just feel like at some point they're adults and they have family members that know and love each other and love them. Like, you know, Jim's family loves Cameron, Cameron's family loves Jim. And so that's not an easy thing to see them feuding the way that they are. So I'm just hopeful that once again they're going to make up because now everybody's telling different stories about this, about that. These are also things that happened so long ago, you know, and it was a time in New York when it was wild times. I just remember that's when the hip hop police were strong. That's when we were all outside going to the clubs. It's just not like that anymore. And people are making their business moves and doing their thing right now. So again, I never like to see people like beef with each other like that, unless it's, well, Jim is making some songs, I guess. But on wax, it's okay. You know what I mean? So do that. But again, just like with the bag fuel Math Hoffa situation, I don't think it's going to turn into something where they see each other and it's on site. And I also think that they're both really funny. And so I could see them seeing each other and I can see them kind of like laughing about the stuff that they said at some point later on. Because when everybody's doing good, ain't no reason to be beefing.
Right. In closing, in 2018, Mayor Bill de Blasio declared August 28th Angela Yee Day. Tell me what you did to deserve such recognition.
I was surprised that I got my own day when I did. I actually thought I was just getting like some type of proclamation. And then when they were showing it to me before I got on the stage, I was like, I saw the end. It was like, I does declare, you know, August 28th, Angela, you did. I said, hold on, am I getting my own day? And so that was really exciting for me. I think it has to do with community service. There's a lot of things that I do in the community, and I probably don't talk about it enough. You know, I'm planning to do a whole lot more. I started a Wealth Wednesdays real estate club. I have a detox program, the Detox Now, that I'm a part of. These are all new things I'm doing. I've joined a team at Nest Seekers, and we're going to be doing this whole Build with Yee thing where I'll be leading this out of the office. My girl Kashan is in here with me right now. She's got her real estate license. We haven't even announced it yet that, you know, we're doing this together. My main thing is that I really want to do great things in the community, but I also want to do it with my friends. And so that's what's really fun and exciting for me. And I always have felt like 2025 for me, once I get myself together, you know, we got a lot going on right now with investments. But once I have that stream coming in, philanthropy is like top of mind for me for everything that I want to do.
Thank you for your time, Angela. You've been a great guest. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this Tragedy Gaddafi repping that true ever, forever, respectfully. Tune in, stay tuned. We with that Gully TV. Everything Gully, everything ooh ah. 2-5, Queens finest.